you everybody for coming to the final stage, the final webinar for the week. So we have Paul Morris, who is the Digital Marketing Director over at Marshalls. He has led previous digital teams over at places such as the Co-op, He's Their Cousins. I'll get Paul to talk to you a little bit more about his background. But today we're talking about the 5 impacts of coronavirus on digital and how to respond, how to recover, and how to renew. We have 4 more scheduled for next week, but this is the final one to finish off what has been a really good week so far, ready for the weekend. This is going to be a really interactive session, so Paul's giving a presentation about this subject, but if you have any questions or want to query any of the points that he's discussing, put them in the chat. Also, if you do like the webinar, please do comment on LinkedIn as well and CC, I think it's the @ with Paul, as well as the Digital Leaders Club to get some more people attending for next week. Because the feedback so far is fantastic. A lot of people have found it really useful. So I'll pass it over to Paul to start off, and hope you all enjoy.
Thanks, Jack. Let me bring up the presentation, everybody. Jack, can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Fab. Right, guys and girls, I'm on. You've got me for the hour. I've timed the presentation. It's going to probably take about half an hour. It's not death by PowerPoint either. You've got about 20 slides. Very much discursive as we go. Really encourage you to use the chat box as you go in. Jack's really helping kind of moderate. Towards the end, there'll be time for a Q&A. If you've got any questions, please ask them of me. I've done enough conferences in my time to hopefully answer them, but I'd really just encourage you also to add some of your comments in. I think, we've got a lot of, I've seen the kind of the invite list from those that have been accepting. We've got loads of experts that are already on, so I just encourage you to embellish or argue or question as we go in as well. So lead slide, I'll explain about myself and Marshalls in a moment, just call out 4 areas for you. So the first one, the bottom left URL, searchmuse.com, very much about my blog, thought pieces. I do a lot of judging, check there. Next to that is my Twitter handle, a lot about digital and marketing on there. Searchmuse.com with a Z is a lot about a digital newsletter that you may find of interest, and the other one's just about me. So agenda then, I'll cover very briefly about me and Marshalls in a moment. I'll then talk about rainbows and unicorns or a horror movie. Let's see which one you're in. And maybe the shades of grey in those. I'll cover then, just over 5 slides, the 5 impacts of coronavirus on digital and marketing, and then how to respond, recover and renew. I love a good 3-stage recovery plan. A lot of other people seem to, and I'll be quoting some of those that I've been involved in the past, like the Co-op. I speak at pace. I'm a Mancunian. I do hope you can understand my drawl. And Jack, tell me to shut up or slow down as I'm going.
Happy to, that's fine.
So again, briefly, I'm not here to sell in Marshalls, but work for a great business, have done for about 8 months, Marshalls PLC. So they're a FTSE 250 business, circa 500 million turnover, growth over a good handful of years, but absolutely has been impacted. We're within the construction industry, both for home builders, homeowners and the construction industry. So, challenging times for us, and I can kind of tell you or impart some of the developments that we're doing as a business. Global business, mainly UK though, and about 2,500 employees, just to give you some context. Again, that's where I'm working currently at Marshalls. Just as these feed in, digital and marketing expertise, 22 years. Agency brand side, from the likes of Late Rooms, God rest its soul, genuinely was a start-up, 1 person in the call centre, up to 100 odd, and then the likes of Co-op running across the group, digital and marketing. So reasonable amount of experience across different brands and sectors. So we've got my nice little unicorn sailing on a rainbow. Now, actually, I do think that you're going to have a few people that are in rainbow and unicorn land. As Jack alluded to, we're in a bit of a group, and some people are benefiting from the current environment. There are some sales that are going well in certain sectors. To be frank, many of us are not in those though. There may be shades toward a horror movie or a challenge. But you know, there are some challenging times ahead for us, and I'd imagine a lot of the people that are on this this call, this video, are feeling that. So you know, I use a word pivot in there. Pardon my language, but it's a bit of bullshit bingo at the minute. I think that every man and his dog's using the word pivot, but it's true. You know, a lot of businesses are absolutely needing to pivot their strategy, not necessarily their mission, vision, and values, but their strategy to deal with the common coronavirus themes. And I'm going to cover some of those as we're going over the next few slides. So what have we got? These are the 5 key sections that I've got. This bit, again, 5 slides take about 15 minutes, and I'm going to cover each one on one slide. So first, if I go into the recession and the organizational strategy changes, but first, this just gives you a view of what Marshall's 5-year vision is. So I don't know how many of you, you know, you've done business studies or marketing degrees or whatever you do. You know, the temple structure is a very common structure. I've worked in several businesses that have used this. At PZ Cousins, we called them casitas. So casita is Spanish for house, and we had one of those for each bit of the business. It's just a, you know, a common way of articulating your mission, vision, values, and strategy. We've got these under each other bits of the business. So we've got one for digital transformation, one for marketing, etc. But for me, I was on a call with the leadership team the other day with our CEO, and he was very much importing on us that, you know, the purpose and our mission remain. Some of the strategic elements under that will change, but a lot of this still remains the same. This is actually a 5-year vision for us. And I'd encourage you to make sure that in your businesses that you absolutely know what these are, and that you're ultimately guiding to that kind of North Star. I'd say within this as well, just make sure that you're aligning everything from, you know, the typical SMART objectives, and also that you've got I use SOSTAC, so that stands for situation, objectives, strategy, tactics, activity, and control. And then you've got a measurement framework that embodies all of the activity that you're going to do. So one that's specific to me and the work I've done in the past is called RECONS. You may have questions on that later, which stands for reach, engagement, conversion, opinion, network, and spend. And we measure all of our activity from that framework. So I just really encourage you to really hone back on that temple and that master strategy for anything that you're about to do specifically with changes to coronavirus. So I should also note, actually, this post, 5 points that I'm going to make, I put a blog post together on them. I ran them all by, again, the Jack's kind of been brilliant in putting that community together. And there's a post that I put on my blog, hence why I mentioned it earlier on. And one of the pieces within that, and there's lots of links off to much more academics than I, and one of those was from McKinsey, and this was in that article. And it showed different reactions or responses that we believe, you know, as thought leaders, that will happen. There's lots of people that are talking about everything from U-shaped to V-shaped to W-shaped. I prefer my sport, and I'd probably more see it like a Nike tick, a depressing Nike tick that's probably more in the middle two, so the middle one, or the one to the left of that. And I'd see it being more jagged. And that will really impact, I think, how we respond and how business reacts to the changes that we've got ahead. I think I don't think I'm that old. I'm 42, but I've lived through a couple of recessions. I made myself redundant in the last major one in the financial crisis in 2008 from a business I was a director in Bristol. So I've seen some of the harshities that recessions bring, and I'd really encourage you to look at, whilst digital wasn't as big in recessions before that, most certainly, you know, the bubble I was in late rooms when, you know, the Twin Towers were crashed into, so that massively impacted the travel industry. So I've seen some quite seismic changes, and I'd really encourage you to look at how people have dealt with recessions and marketing has changed in those. And I think coronavirus gives a really different lens to that. And I think it's how you guide and pivot your organization that will be key to us moving forward. So, you know, one area, again, I'll give you a link to this later. I've got put a model together called the 10C strategy model, and that includes things like culture, capability, campaigns, commerce, community, CX. And I'd say for me, I'm really always thinking of that model and what will happen with it. So, you know, really obvious things will be around commerce, e-commerce taking off. There'll be a lot about perhaps campaigns maybe going down. We've seen some very strong community work from some brands that I'll come on to shortly, doing some great work to help in the current environment. And I think it's how you leverage that model. So again, that might be something else that you can utilize moving forward. So I'd see, again, this was taken an image from The Guardian. Again, I'll be able to send you this deck. Jack's got a copy in a PDF form and we can circulate that after the session. But this was taken from about a month or two ago, and there's been more closures since I screenshotted this. But I really do unfortunately see a decline in retail and the lust for a new low-touch world and engagement world. So, you know, the death of the high street retail has been, in my opinion, grossly exaggerated over many years now. But we are really seeing changes. I mean, any of you that go up your high street at the minute, I live in Poynton in Cheshire near Stockport, and they're all practically shut. And I don't really see several of those small and medium-sized businesses opening up if they don't change their behaviours. I mean, I stole this comment. I haven't unfortunately got the source, but you know, a new low-touch post-coronavirus world will likely emerge that will change how we eat, work, shop, exercise, manage our health, socialise, and spend our free time. So I think that, you know, it'll be on a lot of retailers in particular to look at how that hands-off, low-touch world can be enabled maybe via apps. If you go to the likes of Amazon Go, a lot of their stores that they've enabled, I've done that work with Amazon in London in a previous life, and what they're looking to develop from their Amazon Go model in store. And I just encourage that if we're not really as marketeers, business owners, digital experts, not enabling benefits maybe in the real world over the digital world, then it's going to struggle. So I'd really ask us to look at our business models and operating models. Next one then, kind of obvious, I'd say. I don't know about you, but I've got Amazon packages coming by the hour for everything, and many other retailers as well. But this was something that, again, I've got a link to, and is in the blog article on searchmuse.com. It's really one of the first true signs that I saw of how the winners and the losers. So if you're selling disposable gloves, you know, good on you. But then these other obvious things, you know, I do a lot of boxing fitness. So, you know, when you're looking at a really dearth of weight training equipment and boxing equipment, or it's double the price, they're obviously got some challenges around their infrastructure and movement of goods, but some are benefiting from that. And then there's some real obvious negatives as well. You look at, you know, the luggage, suitcase, you look at a certain degree of classroom furniture, of camping equipment. There's some losers and winners within this. And I think it's how you look to pivot and change some of how you're generating money, and stating the obvious, how you're dealing with that last mile. In my experience, at the likes of PZ Cussons, which is about an 800 million FMCG, brands like Saint-Tropez, Imperial Leather, Carex, you know, that was always a challenge for those globally. But you look at, nothing to do with me now, you look at companies like that, and they're really embracing that wider environment. Only yesterday I saw them launching across a plethora of e-commerce platforms in Nigeria. Anybody that's done business in Africa will realize the challenges that results in, but they're embracing that challenge for the new world that is. So yeah, I'd say, you know, look at, is it micropayments? Is it subscriptions? Is it re-looking at your 4Ps, so price, product, promotion and place, and looking to change those, pivot those for the e-commerce world? I think there'd be a lot of benefit in reevaluating what you're doing and how you're promoting. Now this one, I've done a conference on half an hour, 45 minutes just on this, so I'm not going to talk on any length on this, but there's a link that in the deck that I'll circulate afterwards, and I've stolen some academia, cast it as my own, given them reference on my blog, and augmented it with a digital world. But it just really, the important part that I believe that trust will play in the world that has already obviously been. And you look at the likes of Witherspoon's, the gentleman that owns Witherspoon's, and the lambasting he's had of what he's done to his staff, unfurloughing, suggesting getting a job at Tesco. You look at Branson, you know, he was the real leader in business that everybody looked up to, and what he's been doing. A lot of people have been saying, why don't you sell Necker Island rather than making lots of people redundant? I've got my first and only prop because I use it every morning. But, you know, these guys, Grenade, I'm networked with the CEO on LinkedIn. He's been doing some great stuff around supporting the community and enabling people in the hospitals with simple things like protein shakes and food. You look at, I don't know loads about Brewdog. You look at how they've started manufacturing certain equipment. You look at Barber. You know, I think that rather than the airy-fairy, you know, light touch, they've been really digging into the communities and embracing what they're doing. And I believe that they'll come out of this a lot stronger as a result. So I'd say really strong leadership, really forward-looking, community-based, really sharing brand content that resonates with target audiences. So, you know, we've been really looking to engage in how we enable people in, we believe in building better spaces. So how can we help people perhaps in their garden enjoy that more? We're not trying to play and fight wider wars, but we are really looking to help the communities that we've already built and fostering them. Digital transformation. So again, you know, another one of those buzzwords that everybody likes using. If you've not already come across this framework, this isn't mine. I have blogged about it and you can find links to this, but if this VUCA framework, VUCA, however you pronounce it, is something that's been around for many years, but I'm not being funny. If we're not in a world of complexity, volatility, ambiguity and uncertainty, I don't know what world we're in. You know, we're all facing these challenges at the minute, and I'd encourage you, if you haven't already read this model, to have a look. It's very relevant for now, and it can perhaps guide some of your thoughts around digital transformation. And I'd say for those, you know, there'll be experts that are on this video call now that maybe are leading that. I've led digital transformation initiatives in the past with other brands and with our current brand in parallel with other colleagues. I'd say, you know, the pace of which will change for a small few. I think in the short term it will speed up, but I'd suggest that for the majority it'll be the medium and the long term where the pace of digital transformation will pick up. And I think it's almost taking a step back, looking at what small steps you can put in place now that will aid the longer term, because rightly businesses are prioritizing paying staff, furloughing, engaging, leading for the short term and looking at cash flow over major AI transformation projects as an example. So I'd really be patient with the pace of businesses. You know, we're certainly doing that rightly. So yeah, have a look at that model. So how to respond, recover, and renew. I believe that any good strategy, recovery strategy, and rebuild strategy is in 3 phases. You may disagree or agree. Again, please put your thoughts in the chat box. But you know, the likes of Deloitte. Again, you can find these online. I haven't got links to these, but you can find them easily online. Deloitte have gone down to respond, recover, and thrive. You've got Salesforce along the lines of survive, alive, and thrive. Sounds like some kind of song, people or something. I don't know. Then you've got the co-op, and I'm going to run through a case study with you shortly. I was there during the rescue and rebuild phases. I was very fortunate to report into the CEO for about 10 months whilst I was there, Richard Pennycook, who developed that strategy. So I can tell you from the horse's mouth what was going on there. And then I just found out, I've put in inverted commas speech marks mine because I don't want to get sued by Gartner. But I developed this model a few weeks ago and then discovered a couple of weeks ago as I was preparing for this that Gartner's actually developed the same wording. So I'd just like to say, I don't know if I got there first, but I'll say it. But also that this, the next framework that you're going to see over the next 3 slides is very much my view of how to respond, recover, and renew. And I haven't actually seen, I think it's behind a firewall, I haven't actually seen any of the Gartner work. So I'm not trying to present their thoughts as my own. So if I give you a very simple framework to begin with, really. And this was something that the co-op really looked to do. I'm not going to, you can look online for some of the challenges that the co-op had in 2013. Some of you will know, real born out of Rochdale pioneers over 100 years ago, a brilliant business, but had some challenges around, some challenges with the bank and some other people that were not doing the best for the business. They went into a rescue phase that nearly saw the business go bump. Great leadership from Ewan Sutherland and Richard Pennycook after him, that put in a really simple 3-phase plan, and I'll show you some of that on the next slide that I've got. And what, for me, they were absolutely clear on purpose, and they aligned absolutely everything to that purpose. Whereas before, in all honesty, I was there before then, they didn't quite do. So, you know, championing a better way of doing business for you and your communities, and what that meant, they really made that resonate. They tried to employ the very best. They already had some great staff within the 70,000 circa that they employed, but they really tried to develop them as well. So as an example, I did a master's degree that was paid for by the co-op. So they really tried to invest in people that they saw could help the business and move it forward. And they really did a great job, I'd suggest the HR team in particular, of informing, engaging and empowering colleagues to do the job. And I'd say that that's paramount. I'll talk a bit more about this shortly, but you know, what does that look like for your business? So is that using Teams and Trello and Slack and etc. to really do a good job of that, to build you into the renew stage? The next is, again, this is comes from something called the Vital 5 and the Winning 10. It was essentially the co-op's strategy for the 3 phases I've just told you about. That came from the exec. I'd love to say that that was my brainchild, but it wasn't. The brainchild is the thing that you see before you on your screen. So I wanted some way of visualizing that and showcasing how digital and marketing can make an impact. So again, anybody that knows Manchester will know the famous Metrolink service. Some will love it, some will hate it. And I built it in the topography of the Metrolink. It was really simple, built in WordPress. It was responsive design. You could click on the stops, those little dots that you see. You could engage, explore who's responsible, whether they're on track, etc. And it was just a way of charting success over the quarters of the rebuild recovery plan. So the Vital 5 would be, in their case, the Vital 5 things that they needed to nail so that the business didn't go bump. And that was things like reimagining membership, true north of really focusing down on food. And then almost I'd call it the icing, the cherry and the sprinkles on top. So brilliant bits of the business like redefining the legal services business or transforming general insurance. So I'd encourage, and I've done similar maps with different topographies for the likes of Tesco Bank in Edinburgh, for the likes of PZ Cussons based on the tube map in London. So whatever your vehicle, I'd suggest that this is a key way of helping the business understand the impact that you've got. And that's just one visualization way of doing it. So this is, again, in inverted commas, my model or someone else's model, if you don't believe me. And I'm going to cover with you again over the next 3 slides, the respond, the recover and the renew. And I'll give you some examples at each stage that embellishes a lot of the wording that you can see in front of you. So the respond phase, I can dress this up to be more than it is, but I'd really call this out to be survival. And I'm going to use some timeframes with you now, but you need to heavily caveat and question what I say on time, because it really depends on the business sector, whether you're a startup, whether you're a big organization. You know, it would very much differ from a startup to, say, the co-op or PZ Cussons or Marshalls. But, you know, it's the first, I'd suggest, about 6 months, and you're in survival mode. You know, you as leaders, your exec, your board, your CEO are really looking at how, you know, my words, you know, have they established a COVID-19 task force? Have they established a virtual war room that can deal with the challenges that you've got? And I'd say speed and courage are the watchwords versus elegance. You know, you're not going to have this beautifully brilliant plan. You may be working in 3-week furlough timelines, because you're really trying to deal with, establishing cash is king. You're making sure that you furloughed the right people. You're continuing with the critical work, and you're pulling back on non-essential spend. So one thing that, I've done here, absolutely within week 2, I was Moscowing up. So, must, should, could, won't, all of the spend within my team, and then looking to integrate that within the wider business. So, if you're not doing that with the greatest respect, I don't think you're doing your job to make sure that you're encouraging, treating cash as it is king. That's why businesses go out of business. They don't have cash to survive on. It's not necessarily the strategy that fails them. So I'd really say, make sure that you're still investing in tech and resource at this stage, but you may, like I mentioned a few slides ago, be taking a step back. You're really looking to go, right, what are the key things that we need to establish to create the groundworks, the base foundations to move forward in the next 2 phases that I'm going to mention. So you're not going to be embarking on maybe a major AI project, but to support e-commerce, you may be polishing your chatbot. So we've got a chatbot called Solomon, and we're absolutely looking at, perhaps not at this stage, really reimagining that, but we're looking at augmenting what the questions are that it's being asked, feeding it in and making it better at answering those questions, which frees up some people that are on the phones to take orders. So maybe it's some simple things that can augment your wider transformational strategy. The next stage, so recover, phase 2. Again, timelines a challenge. I'd say most businesses are not quite in this yet. You may be starting to approach this. Some will be in it, some will be a few months off, but you're really looking to recover. So, your leadership has established that disruption is the new norm. Again, without unpicking, I read quite a lot and watch quite a lot, but we're not going to have anything to resolve this for the next maybe 12 months. We don't know if that's going to reawaken as something perhaps worse, or maybe there's going to be other pandemics in due course. So we need to be establishing that this is the new norm. I'd suggest that most businesses need to be moving towards a digital first mentality. Now, that absolutely doesn't mean that you should throw the baby out with the bathwater and not look at your other marketing channels. The wider, with us as an example, merchants, partners, offline trading, massively key, but we should equally be really doubling down on developing our digital capacities and our ways of connecting digitally. And that's everything from Teams through to e-commerce, through to engaging with our client base via digital means. So leadership, leaders need to lead. It's a really obvious statement, but going back to the co-op example, you really need to step up that leadership, show true compassion with your colleagues, and really help them make sense of what's going on. I'd say digitization of the business is really starting to step up. Digital transformation that you put in the first stage is really starting to gather pace. The board, if they haven't already got it, absolutely are getting it, and they're understanding that you're not the little baby that's in the corner. To quote Dirty Dancing, can't believe I've just quoted Dirty Dancing in a digital presentation. If you were before, you're certainly not now. So you need to be really looking to develop and fast track your digital development and transformation. And I'd say digital first CX, so customer experience, and that's throughout the business. So, if, with the greatest respect, if you think that everything that was the same with a quantitative and qualitative research before about what you thought were buying behaviors or spend patterns or decision making or the way that they're integrating with your site, it's going to have changed and evolved. And so I'd suggest that insight and data and AI becomes really important in this phase, particularly if it wasn't before, to move you forward. So the final phase, if we're then looking at the renew phase, again, timelines are a difficult thing. I'd suggest this is sort of 1 to 3 years out. So you'd really be looking at the fact that we've got a vaccine for COVID-19, that we've got a lot of it under control, that let's say we've got that Nike tick, we really have gone down and we're really starting to work our way up through that Nike tick. But we're still in challenging times. I'd say in phase 3, the renew stage, they're expanding digital business capacity and expertise. They're really fueling innovation. You've really got an innovation hub. Even if you're a pretty traditional business, you're really treating innovation and development seriously. I'd say that there's a lot more that's been AI driven. So again, without giving away too much, I did a lot of consultancy about a year ago at Tesco Bank, and they were on a transformation. They were really looking at service in particular to begin with. So, how you can automate responses maybe via a chatbot, how you can deal with your telephone service more eloquently, how that responds to human interaction rather than the typical press button, how that perhaps integrates into your CRM system, so that if for the last 2 times they've been querying balances and overdraft, you're probably going to put them through to the balances and overdraft section versus another generic department. But also it moves into CRM, marketing, sales and commerce. And these, like I said at the start, I do a lot of judging. These starting to be a lot of AI-driven e-commerce optimization engines that are starting to come to the fore that can really help, rather than your still brilliant but traditional A/B or multivariate tests. Self-service knowledge bases and chatbots are particularly being developed in this area of renew stage. Real-time and predictive analytics absolutely integrated. So you're not just responding to what you believe personas or target segments are, but you're really studying new behaviors and responding to them on the fly. And digital twins, again, are being adopted by more businesses. So again, about 6 months, a year ago, I was in a business called JLA. So, and you can look them up, but they were really adopting the digital twin approach. So that's where it's like a complex virtual model of your business in a digital world. So for them, again, without giving too much away about the business, using IoT sensors, so Internet of Things sensors, you're embedding them in factory machines, in the machines that you're sending out to the B2B trade. You're looking at operational data. Are they about to fail? Are they operating at a maximum level? Could you be responding to that person with a proactive call to say it's due for renewal or it's suboptimal? You need to do X, Y, or Z to get more from it. That's really customer service, but it's also upsell and cross-sell opportunities and things like digital twins within, we're obviously looking in this area in areas like manufacturing, construction, distribution can really help optimize areas like distribution chains. So look, I've got, as ever, I knew I'd ramble, not quite hit the 30-minute mark. I'm on about 32. So I'll quickly summarize some points, another couple of slides. Again, I just encourage you, if you've got any questions, please, if you haven't already done so, add them into the chat box. Again, I'd encourage you, you can always save me bacon if I can't answer something, and you can help put some answers in there, and Jack will help facilitate. He's an expert on the topic as well. He'll start reading some of those out rather than me. But I'd say as a summary, I've covered the 5 impacts that I believe coronavirus are going to have on digital marketing. And this was very much peer reviewed. So this group that Jack talks of, I was sharing it with them and getting opinions from them. They believe that a lot of those are correct. And then the 3 stages to moving forward of respond, recover, and renew to deal with that. I'd kind of finish with a good luck to us all kind of message. Whether you're currently working or not, or, you've seen contracts cut short, still think that there's a place for some great leaders that can take us forward and deal with the situation that we've got now, and most certainly for the next couple of years at least. So look, thanks for listening. Like I said, I'll stop sharing shortly. We'll move into Q&A. If COVID wasn't eating Mr. Messi, he's now eating Mr. Tickle. Just a reminder of some of those outreach areas that you can get some information from me from. And again, I'll share this presentation afterwards via Jack. So Jack, if I perhaps start to hand over to you and stop sharing.
Yes, no, thanks a lot for that, Paul. Guys, if you have any questions, please put them into the chat box. One of the questions which I wanted to ask you anyway, Paul, just in terms of, there's a lot to consider with a lot of businesses. Do you feel as though the 2 different worlds, pre-COVID and post-COVID, are very, very different? So do you think a lot of leaders are looking at their existing team in terms of the 3 stages that you're talking about, do you think they're looking at their team in a little bit more detail and going, who's going to be on this journey with me over the next 12 months? Who's got the fight? Who's going to be helping me achieve what I need to achieve for the business? Do you think a lot of people will be looking at that at the moment?
I think completely. Again, without betraying confidences of people that I know, and I'm sure that you know many more than I do, Jack, I'd absolutely suggest that that's the case. I think a lot of people are looking at organisational structures, whether that's unfortunately making redundancies or changes. I believe that the path that we've been on for quite a period of, I'll just take digital and marketing as examples. I think that their worlds are going to collide much more in a good way, actually, that offline and online will merge much more. I think that you'll start to get more leadership from, I'd suggest, digital leaders. So, those that haven't already developed their skills really do need to. And I think that businesses will be looking for leadership. I think you have the polar opposite. So anybody that knows a marketing leader called Mark Ritson, he suggests, again, pardon my language, it's all a bit of bullshit, and a lot of us are going to go back to the same old world that we had before. Well, he's a really informed speaker, and I'd say that some patterns of behaviour will absolutely do that, will just revert. But I'd really challenge that as a general thought process, and I really do think, and I know a lot of people think, that we're at a real seismic change in certain behaviours working. So I'd say, I think that, and it's those people that showcase themselves as leaders, showcase themselves as personal brands, and can show the business the value they can add, will be the ones that will win.
Yeah, I think, as you said, like, a lot of brands are under the magnifying glass at the moment, aren't they? So there's a lot of communication coming in, and people are spending more time to actually read any of the emails, or how people are marketing themselves online at the moment. So you've seen who are the ones who are helping people and those who are, well, maybe not, I guess. So we've got a question here from Matt. So he says, how do you take your clients and customers on the journey of a greater degree of digital delivery when the norm they are used to is a more traditional physical connection model?
Oh, great question. So again, if anybody can add to it, I'd say a lot of that is around leadership and education. So I'd say from an internal perspective, it's showing them the reasons why. And I mean, and if this pandemic isn't a good reason why, but it's almost showing them, I'd say, work from data and from insight. So can you show them trends, changes in behaviours, reasons to believe that the new world is coming sooner than most of them had thought? So I'd use data and insight as a basis. I think that leaders will be able to embellish passion in the delivery of that. So that's what good leaders will do. They'll help drive the business forward. I think that I'm a big believer in POCs, so proof of concepts. So if you can really show at micro levels that what you're doing is moving you forward, and you might be starting with, I don't know what small is in your world, but it's £100 1 week, and then it's £10,000 several weeks or months afterwards. It's taking them on that journey to show the incremental benefits. And the same with external stakeholders, it's explaining the reasons, and I think helping facilitate customers. And a lot of it is also, again, I mentioned about CX, particularly in the middle phase. It's really looking at the changes that we're going to see, and I think the only way of using that is via surveys, both online and offline, and qual and quantitative data that'll again embellish a lot of your strategy, and it'll prove why you're doing it. So any other good ideas, any other good comments, Jack?
Yeah, so we've got, I was going back, there's been a few come through. So after that, so as I said, businesses define digital transformation differently. Are you able to talk more about your experience with digital transformation?
Yeah, so I've been in a few businesses that I've either partly led or just been part of. I think it's from what angle you start from. So there's a couple of people that have been good digital transformation leaders that have almost gone, we're going to take it to the absolute edges. We're going to show you the amazing robotics, the amazing AI, and we're almost going to work backwardly from them with relevance to show how they can improve your business. Again, to a degree, sort of like really extending the digital twins. I don't necessarily work to that route. I personally always start with, that's why that temple that I showed you earlier, I believe is so key. So I think that digital transformation, and again, it's not a test, but one of the boxes within that was digital transformation. There's actually, so I believe that that's the right view, but there's an argument that digital transformation embellishes all of those areas. So I'd say it's looking at your mission, vision, values, and master business strategy, and then looking at what part digital plays. And again, you haven't got it in front of you, but this 10C model I mentioned, one of those is digital transformation that circles all around commerce, campaigns, community, etc. And it's how it helps support the wider business. And that isn't, with the greatest respect, some people just view digital transformation like, let's do a smarter digital marketing campaign. That isn't digital transformation. You know, it's fundamentally changing the way that your business behaves via the utilization of technology and digital technologies. So that's the way that I view it.
Just a question leading on that. So with a lot of these, I'm seeing a lot of B2B businesses, I might have mentioned before. So alcohol, B2B food, and the B2B food guys are actually, well, pursuing digital transformation at pace and putting up B2C websites within 3 or 4 weeks. And then you've got the alcohol guys who've already got a B2C channel seeing increases of online sales of 400%. So do you think, I mean, these guys will have to consider what they're going to do moving forward, but obviously they've got a spike in sales at this moment in time. Do you think that there will be new players coming on into the market which can actually get market share from the grocers, from, if it's alcohol, the main one I can think of in my head is Majestic. So do you think they could actually pursue that once the spike may dip, or do you think the spike will continue based on changing consumer habits?
Yeah, I think, good question. I've seen some of that as well. So in some of the judging that I've done in the past, even before coronavirus was hitting, I was seeing businesses, and I think actually, funnily enough, one of them was in the booze industry that was turning from the B2B to B2C. So it's a good point. But so I do think, but again, there's this almost Mark Ritson, and I'm not as established or knowledgeable as him, but versus the Paul view, which is I think he would suggest, well, everybody's, again, I'm simplifying his opinion, going to go back to old ways of working. Yeah. And I'd say that on that point, I think that you're going to get a spike, as an example in that industry, you're going to get spikes now. You're going to get more people. There'll probably be then a subsequent, maybe perhaps dip down. But I'd say that trend, which might be more B2B businesses moving in B2C and us doing that online, I think will speed up. I mean, Jack, we were having a discussion in the group a while ago about FMCG. I've done a lot of this PZ Cousins business and for Co-op, and it was a really interesting debate. I think circa at the minute, you're looking at about 15%, I think, of, again, somebody challenged me on the number, 15% of retail is transacted through online shopping. And PZ Cousins were really struggling at the start to kind of get into that. And I really do see that that's a big growth area. But you'll always have people that will want to go back to feeling the fruit, smelling the fruit, the experience of doing it. So I think that there is a place, to your point before, teams will merge, and it's how they deal with that. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting path. I don't think there's one answer.
We've got an anonymous question here. So when it comes to brand and trust, do you think all brands need to relate to an action that helps communities combat with COVID? It looks like everyone is desperate to show a connection with it, when many times it does not look unique or does not relate to their purpose.
I know Pedro, so hello, Pedro. Top bloke. Yeah, I think it can. This was one of my earlier points about it coming across as disingenuous, and I think brands nearly watch where you're playing. If that goes back to the point, I think that I mentioned some before. The likes of the Grenade, the likes of the Brewdog, the likes of again some of those that Barber that are producing the PPE. You can say that they're straying into a world that isn't naturally theirs. So to produce alcoholic, stuff. But I think if you can show that you're doing that appropriately, so I'll give you an example for Marshalls. Marshalls helped build and produce a lot of the groundworking and transportation of that for the Manchester Hospital. But that was absolutely a place that a contractor actually fell out, and we helped fill that hole and gap. We did mention that on our social channels and on LinkedIn, and we got a lot of credit for that, but we weren't straying from our mission and our vision and our values in doing that. We do a lot of great work in the community, but then we're not equally going to start playing in areas that we haven't got a license to play in. So I'd say, yes, there is an element as to how much you should flex your brand. And don't, if you're coming across as disingenuous, I think you, pardon my language, is screwed in this environment. They'll see straight through it.
Another question. So what companies have you seen so far that have shown a good example of pivoting or renewing their digital presence, or even changed their whole proposition or offering and done well from it?
Oh, that's a good question. So I've mentioned some already. I'd say obvious ones that are benefiting. So I mean, man alive, Bezos. If any of you have heard some of the numbers that he's further developing, he'd already built his business on Amazon from the ground up. They're actually turning some, as an example, PPC off. So they're changing their channel mix. They're changing the deals, if you've noticed, on them, but they're really looking to deliver essential products. They're changing their subscription models. They're starting to offer, so I use Amazon a lot, they're starting to offer some music, and surely part of that within you get HD music free for 3 months. They're trying to get you to trial some of their new services, hoping or expecting that you're going to continue with them. So I'd say that they're not fundamentally pivoting their strategy, but they're changing it. And then there's loads of e-commerce businesses. Again, I don't want to betray trust from some of the group, but that are absolutely benefiting from some of what they're doing. They're changing their marketing mix as well. So yeah, but then there's a lot of businesses that are struggling and just need to pull back. So there's a real mix, I'd say. Any that's coming up that recommended, Jack?
So Joe says, "Hi Paul, great presentation."
Yes, love you.
Agree. Any tips on how to analyze behavior changes on site when traffic levels have dropped significantly? Do we assume new behaviors are here to stay until the COVID crisis itself significantly improves?
Yeah, so oh man, this is where I've just lost 2 tools out of my head that some of my team use. So I'll rethink them and send them after this. But yeah, we're using on-site tracking tech, which I've forgotten. We're using the obvious GA, so Google Analytics. So I'm, to be honest, I was starting to not really log in because I was in constant meetings. Well, Paul isn't in constant meetings anymore. He's doing more on the ground stuff. So I'd say, stating obvious, going to look at some of those paths and really creating conversion paths in there. I'd say somebody in my social team is looking at they're almost doing micro studies. So we're engaging, in our world, installers and merchants. We're asking them almost micro questionnaires. How are you finding the industry at the minute? Are your sales going up or down? Are you self-isolating? Are you struggling getting into people's gardens? Really practical things. And we're learning on the ground from that. And then wider surveys that you can do from things like NPS scores. So I know that some of our NPS scores are continuing on. And then just staying really well connected from a qual perspective. We've still got some of our sales team working that haven't been furloughed, and they're still really speaking and talking. So it's, again, Jack, to your point that you made at the start, this online, offline of not just seeking digital, absolutely using digital, but augmenting that with other channels as well.
Jess says, prioritize digital is certainly the way to go for many businesses. In the e-commerce world, do you see any specific skills that are going to be even more important and skills that are declining? For example, you mentioned earlier, AI is probably going to overtake A/B and BT tests in the future.
Yeah, good question. I'd say the platforms that I'm starting to see coming up that can be a horrible world bolted into your existing e-commerce journeys and help auto-optimize. So, again, absolutely, I've got a Crow, a conversion rate optimization person in my team, but I'd expect that person to be doing a lot of the A/B and MVT, but then looking at bolting. We're using kind of like Kentico and e-commerce functionality within that. So It's how you can look at adapting your tech stack. So I'd say people that are really expertise at maximizing the benefits from tech stack. I've seen far too many tech stacks. Again, it used to be something I consulted on that are disparate, that aren't integrated. That might be how your PPC can auto-optimize from actions that are taking place on your site. I'd say data-driven. I really believe, I'm data-driven, but I'm not brilliant, advanced in Excel or in some of the tools. So I'd say there's absolutely a place for those that are data-driven and those that can really, again, you said it yourself, maximize AI and how that can look. So, this isn't confidential. So we're working with a company in Manchester called Peak AI. So we're looking, you absolutely need to bring some of your skill set in-house. And we've got experts in the business, but also using other businesses that can help you in those areas. So again, there's still a really important place for product owners, project managers that can help facilitate that change, but they'll need to become more techie and more digitally adept.
So there's some comments here. So Alex said, he was agreeing with some of the stuff that we were saying. So I've spoken to a few of the wholesalers who see the pivot to B2C as being entirely necessary. And then also we have here, I came across an example of a brand called TRYD, who used to bring fast fashion to your home to try on. Now I hear they are delivering groceries. Pedro, there are many examples of many brands in the fitness industry that have shown how they have changed their model to take actions helping communities. Maybe not a huge effect in diminishing their revenue gap, but great to improve their affinity with their user base and create new sources of business in the future.
Yeah, Jack, just to add in, I don't know if it's the same business that the person mentioned, but it sounds like it. So I'm on, I've got Amazon Music, but I've also got the free version of Spotify. So I'm out and I'm hearing a lot of ads on for a company called, and it might be the same one, called Tailored, and I think the one that you gave, and they're doing exactly that. So to the point that was before, they've obviously seen an ability to connect with people like me that are now self-exercising. They're going, I can send you a load of tailored versions of apparel, try it on, the stuff you don't like, send back. You'd imagine if that's a decent service. So again, it's still the CX and end-to-end needs to be brilliant, but you're going to stick with them afterwards. And that could be the new way that you're furnishing your wardrobe for years to come. So what a great opportunity in a way that people can't get into stores. So I think that, I don't know who came up with that, I haven't really checked the model out, but what a brilliant pivot. And somebody's actively going after people when, again, without talking too much, but I'm absolutely noticing depression of cost per click prices on the likes of CPM rates on the likes of Facebook. People in certain industries are pulling back on PPC, others are getting more competitive. So I think it's how you can leverage that media mix whilst pushing new products or services.
So Mira said it's not pronounced TRYD, it's tried. So tried.
I think it is the same one. Nice. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, just in terms of, if there are any further questions, please put them in. That would be, Dennis said, how do you see the importance of personal branding within corporate transformation and customer engagement?
Sorry, it just cut off then, Jack. What did you say?
How do you see the importance of personal branding within corporate transformation and customer engagement?
And by personal branding, are they talking you as an individual in that business, or are they talking of?
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? Absolutely key. So, Jack, I mean, just at a very basic level, I'm on here.
Yeah.
I'm developing my personal brand. Let's not pretend otherwise. I do a lot of judging. I learn a lot from judging and the ability to connect with other people. Am I doing that for my personal branding? Absolutely. Am I looking to showcase the work via the likes of that Metrolink for the team, the wider team, to showcase how good they are in the business? Absolutely. I think, these POCs I've spoken about, can you not report back to go, look, whilst this is spending a small amount of money, and by the way, that's very appropriate in the current environment, look at the X, Y, Z that this has given the business, and you really need to give more credibility and credence to the digital or the marketing team for doing that. Look at standing up the e-commerce proposition and the sales that this team developed. So I'd say there is a lot of importance around personal branding in that corporate environment, but stating the obvious, it shouldn't be inappropriate and all about you. it should be about that, the team and what you're bringing to that together. But yeah, personal branding is still key.
Lovely. If there are any other questions, filter them through. Oh, there is another one, a follow-up by Dennis. Is it going to be part of their strategy? So that's in relation to personal branding. So a lot of businesses, do you think they'll incorporate the personal branding as part of their overall strategy or a piece of it?
I'd say they need to look at it, because you look at, again, just the monumental cock-ups that some brands have done recently. So I know Tesla, what's the guy called Tesla? I've read his book. Elon Musk. I mean, he regularly wipes or adds billions to the value of his shares just by opening his mouth. I mean, do you know what I mean?
Back to work on the in his factories this week against law. It's just like, if you're gonna arrest anyone, just arrest me. You know?
Yeah. I mean, hats off to the man, but a bit of a nutter as well. But you know, so you know, I mean, there's some fun around that, and anybody that's seen the Joe Rogan podcast will find his interview very interesting. You know, so you look at Branson and the personal branding from a CEO level, and to be frank, how I don't think he's handled this very well at all, my personal opinion. Again, the gentleman, I've gone and forgotten the pub chain that I mentioned. I think it's Wetherspoons. You know, again, personally, you look at how that gentleman has been lambasted on the likes of LinkedIn and in the news. He's done damage to his brand. Speaking from a personal level, the beer near me is significantly cheaper from his brand. I won't be stepping back foot into his pub until he changes his opinion about how he treats his workforce. And that's not just me, that's a load of other friends that we won't be going back in there. So I think that that personal branding, either at a micro level, people like me, or a bigger level, the people that are leading those businesses. I mentioned the Co-op and the two gentlemen, the Ewan Sutherland and the Richard Pennycutt. I think that they did wonders for that Co-op brand, being authentic and being themselves and leading. And that was their personal brand that merged into the Co-op brand.
Okay, so got someone said Branson is not doing well. And then Jess, we've seen positive examples of businesses reacting and adapting to the situation. Have you seen any travel leisure businesses that have responded well and in an innovative way in this pandemic situation, given half the world is in lockdown?
You know what? I'd like some help on this question, because if I'm being honest, I've not really seen very many. I mean, I was due to have 2 holidays this year, one just at Centre Parks, one at essentially a caravan park in France. And the French one has been doing a great job at communicating with us, actually, and saying, we believe that you'll still be able to do this, and offering us advice on traveling and things. But I must say, I've not seen very many great examples. And I've been in travel, if you were to look at my CV, quite a lot, but it's not something I've currently been in. So are there any coming up? It's a real hard area.
I think it's from speaking to people within travel myself. I think it feels very much like survival. You know, there's I've seen some of the most significant salary cuts, like up to 40% with some, reduced hours. A lot of people who have been put on furlough. I do think the travel industry is very, very hopeful still. It's just they're in a state of, well, just being frozen at the moment. There's not much they can do unless they engage with their customers, like you said.
Jack, can I just give you one example, though? I'm trying to avoid the news of an evening, because it's just not a place to listen to. And that's another thing I think we all need to take care of, our mental capacity at the minute, because it's really affecting me, some of the stuff that's going on. But on the news last night, I did see, and again, maybe they needed to be a stronger brand, but there was a brand that was mentioned that had put 24 of their mobile homes that were helping. They were putting them essentially on a car park of a hospital. And then a lot of the doctors that were worried about infecting people that they lived with, e.g. young doctors that have just newly qualified, they were living and being in them. Now, they took a general shot of those, and I'm not saying that it should be a sick way of advertising, but I thought that they absolutely can state that during this time, and then afterwards is how they've helped facilitate just a really key part of the economy, the environment, and the NHS. And really, they're not losing, they're going idle. So I'd say it's how you can appropriately help the environment or the key workers and services. But I've not seen that many, if I'm being honest, other than that.
I think it's more local travel. So there's been a lot of promotion of local holidays. So I split my time, as you know, between London and the Lake District. So two polar opposites. To be honest, one of the highest infection rates in the UK is in the Lake District at the moment. I don't know whether that's because there's an older population, but there are those individual businesses, and you can see it more, which are really promoting themselves and really driving the force behind it. So, and I can see it, there's loads more people in the Lake District at the moment, and I do feel as though that trend will carry on over the next few months. So I reckon that'll help the local economy more or less. So it's just the ones abroad which you just can't really see the light at the end of the tunnel at this moment in time, which is difficult. So I think that's the last of the questions, but just in terms of any kind of advice or any notes you want to leave people on, is there anything that you'd want to leave?
I would actually, I'd say it was to a point that we mentioned briefly a moment ago. I think it's within this period, there's a lot of stress, whether you've been furloughed, whether you've been laid off, whether your contract's been cut short, whether you're working and you've never worked as hard, maybe even, as you say, on less money than you've ever been on for quite a period of time. So I'd say, I'm not a guru on this topic, but I'd say it's really looking after your mental health. So it's speaking to people that you trust, discussing the current challenges that you've got with other colleagues, if appropriate. It's absolutely seeking solace in things that you enjoy and looking at the bigger picture, which is we will get out of this. So I think it's really looking after your mental health as us as leaders, which will then help our businesses moving forward. That's the only thing I'd say.
Perfect. Well, it was a good chat. It was a good last webinar of the week before the weekend. So yeah, some really good points there. But yeah, if anyone wants to follow up with Paul, you can add him on LinkedIn. As I mentioned, if you did enjoy it, please do put a quick post out on LinkedIn, because we've got 4 more next week. And then I will send out the PDF document that Paul went through today over email, and you should get that email tomorrow. But yeah, everyone, thanks for coming today and have a great weekend.
Thanks very much, all. Thanks for listening.